How should I start? Let me stand up. Sorry, let me set this up. So, it's about 100 years ago. Can you see? This is Hyrule Castle. By the way, this is the map of the game. The real map is a lot larger than this. This is only 2/3 of the entire map. So, here's Hyrule Castle. This castle has been ruled by a villain called Ganon for 100 years. 100 years ago, there was a prophecy that Ganon was coming back to life. So people prepared to fight him, but they lost. So back then, Hyrule Castle prepared to defend against the foreign enemies. They were in good diplomatic terms with the satellite states, while preparing to fight against overseas enemy states by building a fortress like Akala Citadel as the final defense line. So they built an impenetrable fortress and got ready to protect their kingdom. And Hyrule Castle itself was surrounded by a natural stronghold. These are all mountains. And the castle was located in a valley surrounded by the mountain range, so the castle could create a strong defense line. But they were vulnerable to an attack from the inside, because Ganon attacked from inside the castle after he resurrected. That's why thousands of soldiers had to abandon the castle and escape. Not only the soldiers, but all the citizens of Hyrule who lived in the castle town or the villages around the castle also had to evacuate. Now, thousands of royal family members and the groups of cavalry escaped from Hyrule Castle, and they moved a little south, went this way, cut through Romani Plain, and crossed the bridge. This road is not maintained, but thousands of soldiers ran through this road, took a route like this, and finally, sorry, I'm being clumsy. So, finally, they took this winding path, went up toward this ridge. This is the fortress. It's called Akala Citadel, and this is the escape route. Because they were attacked, they first escaped into the valley, fought their way through this road, and ran into this fortress. Meanwhile, this is the path that Link and Princess Zelda took. I mean, everyone escaped, but the civilians didn't escape from the castle. Everyone moved away from the entire valley. Went through this narrow road. And here, do you see these contour lines crowded together? These two places, these are called the dueling peaks, where you can walk through the crack. They're like a natural fortress, and you see these crowded contour lines. What's amazing about Zelda is that these contour lines all represent the real landscapes in the game. They go through a naturally made road between these steep mountains. Here you go. And move to a place called Blatchery Plain. If you come this far, here you go, you reach Fort Hateno. So they escaped there. Okay, let me go through the whole process again. Ganon returned and occupied Hyrule Castle, and here, tens and hundreds of thousands of killer robots, like the giant warriors from Nausicaa, spread throughout the entire country. The army went through this yellow line and ran into the undefeated Akkala Citadel, which was the final defense line. Meanwhile, Princess Zelda and Link went down south with the civilians who were running about, trying to escape between the mountains, across Blatchery Plain, and into Fort Hateno. That's the overview. Okay, let me sit down again. Someone asked, is the crack in the dueling peaks a fault? I think there was a super advanced ancient civilization from more than 10,000 years ago in the world of Zelda, which we aren't aware of. The crack looks artificially made with a beam weapon or something from that time. It looks like you can almost put them back into one piece without any gap. So it looks too clean to be an active fault, but the game doesn't explain it at all. Now, Link and Zelda went down south with the civilians through the road between the peaks and across Blatchery Plain. They took that path because the narrow road kept them from being surrounded by the enemies. Zelda is a great game because this all happened 100 years ago. That's why you see those corrupted robots that have turned into relics all over the place. I first saw them and just thought, oh, there are many of them. But after I finished the game and walked around the place more comfortably, I could tell that it was a battlefield. The narrow road was vulnerable to their attacks from the sides. So was the plain, because there were no places to escape to. That's where they fought. You can tell how they fought, for example, by looking at guardians with their legs cut. They were defeated by Link's sword. On the other hand, those who were defeated by Zelda's supernatural power had all their arms and legs, but they were dead upside down. You get a clear view of what kind of fight they had or the enemies they killed. This is how you enjoy Zelda like you enjoy Buratamori. The relics are not props that the game designers put in randomly to create the atmosphere. They are extremely carefully designed and deployed because they are not just the background. You can read into them. And what you can read from them is so interesting. Now, Link and others went through the narrow mountain path between the dueling peaks to protect themselves from the enemies. But once they got to the large Blatchery Plain, they couldn't escape a battle, and Link used up all his strength and died. This is 100 years ago. That's because... Oh, it's okay. This is not a spoiler because they'll tell you Link died like 10 seconds after the game starts. A large group of guardians attacked all at once when Link and others got out of the narrow path between the dueling peaks and to the large plain. Link was bringing up the rear to fight the enemies who had approached from the back, so he was defenseless against the ones waiting in the plain. On the other hand, because of Link's sacrifice, the civilians could manage to run into Fort Hateno. While there was no army to fight with him, and Princess Zelda couldn't use her supernatural power yet, Link was the only one who could properly fight the enemies who chased after them. Thanks to Link, the people could miraculously run into the fortress. This is what I call the miracle of Fort Hateno. You can tell how miraculous this escape was by looking at all the corrupted guardians remaining in Blatchery Plain, and the ruins of the towns and villages. You'll think, so there was a colony here until 100 years ago. That's why there's a road. Because there was a town in this location, there is a road here. You can find that out by walking. But again, I didn't have any clue while I was playing. I only had shallow thoughts like, oh, it's a convenient road to ride the horse, or oh, there's a ruin there. Maybe I can find a treasure. But I couldn't help it because I was trying to finish the game then. But after I was done, I walked around different places and I started realizing, oh, this was actually a remarkable place. All the fierce battles took place here. Link fought here alone, and the civilians had to fight here as well. There are many ruins that indicate such history. For example, there are like tree branches all over the place around the wrecks of guardians, which you can use as weapons. When I first saw them, I wasn't surprised. I just thought, they won't make a strong weapon. But seeing them all over the place means that when the civilians passed through there, they had to fight too. It gave me a chill. So, the swordsman Link and Princess Zelda fought in Blatchery Plain to protect the civilians. But Link used up all his power there and collapsed. Then, finally, Princess Zelda, who was in despair, used her concealed power. Blatchery Plain still remains in the present time of the game. If you go there, you'll see a vast land extending out to the horizon beyond Fort Hateno, which is covered by numerous wrecks of guardians. All you can see are their dead bodies. You see thousands of them all the way to the horizon. But when you're in the middle of playing the game, you think, no, there are so many of them. Please stay dead. Maybe I'll find some items. After the game is over, when you have the entire plot in your head, you think back and realize that it was a hard-fought battlefield. Then you understand that because people survived that battle, now there's Hateno village near Fort Hateno. And the country is finally starting to restore after 100 years, and the idea really sinks into your mind. Just imagine Princess Zelda using her amazing final power to defeat all the guardians who had spread out to the horizon. Something extraordinary happened at that time. And, hold on. And it was a week ago that I finished the game, but after that, I basically just kept walking around different archaeological sites. And I wasn't thinking about any of these until I finished the game. Like I said, I just thought, oh, these are just item objects that the designers randomly deployed. I was also scared while I was trying to finish the game that the monsters might attack me. So instead of looking around carefully, I usually ran straight to the next destination. I just thought, it'll be annoying to have monsters waiting for me at the ruins, or I hope there's a treasure box there. But once I finished the game and started walking around those sites, I started noticing many things. For example, Fort Hateno, where the civilians escaped into, isn't really a fortress. It's just a checkpoint. There is only a 4 to 5 meter tall rampart made of stone. And even that short stone rampart has collapsed. And someone filled in the collapsed parts with a simple wooden fence. Because after the battle with Guardians 100 years ago, the rampart broke, but the country no longer had any power to restore it. That's why all they could do was to make up the broken wall with a simple wooden fence, but it can only block bandits. And actually, monsters dwell in Blatchery Plain, but because the gate at the ridge is kept open, they can go in and out freely. Humans already retreated from Blatchery Plain. That's why there is Hateno village on top of a mountain far beyond Fort Hateno. It means humans had to retreat that far in order to live. What you see in the present time of the game is the land that is no longer in the human world, although the monsters are not ruling humans anymore. If you see the rampart of Fort Hateno, you can also find lots of dead guardians who were killed while trying to climb up the wall. So, if Princess Zelda's supernatural power awakened a few seconds late, perhaps Fort Hateno would have been destroyed and the world behind the fort entirely invaded by the enemies. But the game doesn't explain this at all. Some minor characters in the game, like random old men and women who are strolling around here and there, sometimes tell you fragments of what happened a long time ago, but they still don't tell you the whole story. But you can see it. If you look around from the top of the cliffs, if you stand on top of Fort Hateno and look down, you can use your Buratamori imagination and realize what happened. For example, so